Are you a home buyer wondering which type of homes you should stay away from? Which properties should you completely avoid? Most buyers have no idea what they're walking into. I've seen thousands of homes. You're at a Saturday open house in Leslieville or High Park. You start picturing where your sofa goes. You're already thinking about housewarming party. But within a few minutes of walking through the house, I can usually tell if a house is a hard no. In a market like Toronto, where the entry point for a detached home is one of the highest in Canada, you cannot afford to be wrong. There is no return policy once the agreement of sale and purchase is firm. Today, I'm breaking down the 5 types of Toronto houses I would personally never buy. And I'm not talking about ugly wallpaper or bad carpet. I'm talking about the flaws that will haunt your resale value forever. I'll show you the red flags that the pretty photos hide. And we're going to look at the gap strategy, the only math that actually matters if you want to move up the property ladder in this city. The first house I'd never buy is the one with an unfixable location. In Toronto, we have very specific soundscape. If you're looking at a beautiful home, you need to look at 3 things that don't show up on a floor plan: the Gardiner Expressway, the rail corridors, and the flight paths. I've had clients tell me, "Oh, I will get used to the white nose." You probably will, but most importantly, the next buyer might not want to. If you're within 500 meters of the Gardiner or a major rail artery, you aren't just buying a house. You're buying the noise and potentially the vibration. Then there's the Pearson flight path. If you're buying in specific pockets of Etobicoke or North York, you're directly under the heavy approach. You can renovate a kitchen, but you can't move the airport. Second, Toronto is famous for its Victorian homes. They have lots of character, the history, the solid brick, but there are 3 things in these older 416 homes that are absolutely deal breakers unless you have a 6-figure slush fund. First is the knob and tube wiring. If you see those ceramic knobs in the basement or attic, stop. Most major insurers won't even give you a policy until it's removed. To rewire a 3-bedroom house, you're probably looking at $15,000 to $20,000 and a lot of holes in your lath and plaster walls. Second, clay drains. Toronto's trees are beautiful, but their roots love old clay sewer pipes. If the main drain hasn't been replaced with PVC, you are one heavy rainstorm away from a sewage backup in your finished basement. Third, the wet foundation. Toronto sits on heavy clay soil. If the house has negative grading, meaning the ground slopes towards the house, water is being pushed into those 100-year-old bricks every single time it rains. Another thing to look at is the location of the house relative to the street. Does it sit at the bottom of the slope where all the water pools? That is a red flag. If the house is fighting gravity and water, nature always wins. Third is the sloppy flip. These are the properties bought by investors who care about the look, but not the guts of the home. They put in quartz countertops and gold faucets, but they leave the 20-year-old furnace and the leaky roof. Now, how do you spot them? Couple things. The permit test. In the city of Toronto, you can check the building permit status online, which I'll put the link to in the description below. If they took out a load-bearing wall to create that open concept feel, but there is no permit, that is a red flag. In the purchase offer, ask for a copy of the permits if it's a flip to ensure the work was done per building codes and inspected by the city. The trim check. Look at where the baseboards meet the floor. Are they level? If they aren't, the flipper just laid new flooring over sagging, uneven subfloor without leveling the floor joists underneath. When you buy a flip, you're paying a premium for someone else's work. If that work is covering up structural neglect, you're paying twice. Once for the renovation and once to fix the mess they hid. 4. Visual stigma and the property next door. You aren't just buying a house, you're buying into the block. In Toronto, land is the asset, but that asset can be devalued by things you can't control. First, hydro corridors, those massive transmission towers. There is no set dollar amount they take off the value, but they slash your buyer pool. If potential buyers won't even look at a house near power lines, your appreciation always lags behind the rest of the neighborhood. Second, the neglected neighbor. If you're the nicest house on a block where the property next door is a hoarder house or has a bunch of rusted cars on their front lawn, you've hit a value ceiling. You won't be able to sell for what the house is actually worth because the neighbor is a visual anchor dragging you down. 5. The lot trap. The fifth house that I would never buy is one with a bad lot. In Toronto, a house is a depreciating asset. The land is the appreciating asset. But not all land is created equal. First is easements. This is a legal right for someone else, like the city or a utility company, to use part of your land. If there is a major sewer easement through your backyard, you might never be able to build that pool, that deck, or the Laneway suite you've been dreaming of. Second is the Laneway or garden suite hype. Houses are being marketed on MLS with, quote, Laneway potential, end of quote. The reality is building a Laneway house or a garden suite is expensive. Unless you have a deep lot, it will eat into the backyard space, which families will view as a negative. Potential buyers look for a backyard for the kids to play, host friends over for a barbecue, and use the outdoor space in the summer. A garden suite or a Laneway suite, eating half of the backyard is a deterrent. Don't pay a premium for something that's not going to work for you and your family. Here's a bonus one for you. The sixth type of house I would never buy. The floor plan failure. Avoid the functionally obsolete layout. I see this a lot in skinny Toronto houses, which feel like a bowling alley. I've seen houses with under 10 feet wide on the inside. That's difficult to work with and very difficult when the time comes to sell the house. Another one is the stairs turning 90 degrees into the house, splitting the living and dining rooms. The house feels very small and less functional. These houses feel like a deal because they're priced lower, but they're a trap. Because the target buyer, usually a young family, will outgrow that house very quickly. If you buy a house you have to sell in 2 or 3 years, you will lose due to the land transfer taxes, realtor fees, mortgage penalties, and legal fees. Now let's talk about the math that matters in Toronto. Most people wait for prices to drop before they buy. But in a city with limited land, that is a losing proposition. The key isn't the price. It's the spread between the property types. Let's say the price of your current home is $800,000 and the price of the house you want to move into is $1.5 million. The gap is $700,000. In a hot market, houses usually appreciate faster than condos. If the house goes up 8% and the condo goes up 5%, the gap widens and you get priced out. Let's go through an example. If a $1.5 million house and a $700,000 condo both drop by 5%, which is more favorable towards the condo as they usually drop more, the house drops by $75,000 and the condo drops by $35,000. The result is the gap just shrunk by $40,000. Now, you didn't lose money on your condo. You gained $40,000 in purchase power for the upgrade. This is how you move up in Toronto. You don't look for the cheapest house. You look for the moment when the gap between where you are and where you want to be is the smallest. Quality over everything. In a booming market, everything sells. But when the market levels off or becomes rational, these houses are the ones that sit on the market for months. They are the ones that force sellers to take massive price cuts. You make your money in Toronto real estate when you buy, not when you sell. If you buy a high quality asset, you're buying peace of mind and a guaranteed exit strategy. If you're wondering if you should buy a house or wait in 2026, check out this video right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.